Welcome back. Now, the work of many black artists during apartheid went largely undocumented, and the contribution to the local and international art landscape of many artists remain unknown. In a quest to shed light on South Africa's hidden art history and pay tribute to mid-century sculptors, expert Wilhelm van Rensburg has curated a tribute exhibition titled A Retrospective Exhibition. Author Charles Skinner and Gavin Watkins also compiled and launched a 656-page book that includes over 1,000 snippets of history captured in photographs. Wilhelm van Rensburg and Charles Skinner joins me now to chat about this book and also the exhibition. Good morning, gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining us here on the South African Morning. So this exhibition and book documents the art and journey of two mid-century sculptors, if I'm correct, Sidney Khumalo and Esrom Lechai. Just talk to us about who these two gentlemen are or were.
They were part of a group of early black modernist artists who, of course, had great difficulty getting proper training. They had to go to Polly Street Art Centre because that was the only independent institution that accommodated people. Under apartheid, the Universities Act, of course, prohibited artists from, black artists from doing tertiary institutions. And they then went on after their studies, they went on to become the trainers at Polly Street as well, helping a lot of black artists. They made particularly sculpture, and they've been overlooked. Often they are relegated to what is known in art history as resistance artists or township art, or the neglected tradition and the like. And so we felt it was high time to put the record straight.
Yeah, and Charles, were these two sculptors that really paved the way for black artists during the apartheid era?
I wouldn't say they paved the way. I think they were unique in their own right. I think each artist is unique in their own right.
Sure.
So you had these two very talented individuals, and as Wilhelm mentioned, you come from a background that's despicable in all senses of the word, but you now have created an environment, a small environment within the art community of Johannesburg at the time in which they could develop their talents.
And talk to us about the importance of telling these stories and preserving these stories, also giving other young and upcoming artists the opportunity to educate themselves on these stories through this book.
Yeah. We at Strauss & Company have what we call an annual legacy exhibition to do exactly this type of thing. We're exposing the general art-loving public to artists who have been overlooked. And so in the past, we've looked at, for instance, Louis Makubela and Douglas Portway. We looked at Gladys Mugudlandlu and Maggie Laubscher. So I like to pair artists when I do these things. Also George Pemba and Robert Hodgins. And last year we had a magnificent Mary Sibande and Dorothy Kay exhibition. Beautiful. And this year we were very fortunate to team up with Charles Skinner and Gavin Watkins. We also, Strauss & Company, also published the catalogue Resonate, as Charles mentioned, documenting all their work and the like. And so we pave the way. We keep the exhibition open for 6 weeks, and we invite the public and, of course, talks and teacher workshops and
Beautiful.
the like, to make it accessible to the general art-loving public.
Beautiful. We'll talk a little bit later about how people can get involved and come and support. But Charles, how do you even put a book of this magnitude together? How do you start? There's so many sculptures, there's so many images. Talk us through, curating this kind of thing.
Yeah, Abigail, it's quite a complex question, because I think, as a disclaimer, neither Gavin Watkins nor I are artists. We're not schooled in arts, we're not art historians. He's a mathematician, I'm a geologist.
Oh, wow.
But we both collect South African art, and we have a particular passion for the works of Sidney Khumalo and Esrom Lechai. And they were producing world-class sculptures at the time of the 1960s and 1970s. And they received some international recognition and local recognition. There was a lot of coverage in the press. But if I had to ask most South Africans, have you heard of them? The answer would probably be no. Yeah. And even people familiar with the arts like myself, as a collector, I knew very little. So the case was, well, you know, let me go back with a background in research and let me start looking for that material.
Yeah.
So it wasn't to go in, you talk of starting a project, it was to start literally from scratch. On Gavin's side, he knew their first gallerist, Egon Günther, very well, so had access to their archives. So we had a very robust point of departure based on primary research.
And I think the education part of this is very important, because as you mentioned, Charles, a lot of people, when you mention these artists, they wouldn't immediately know who they are and what they've done in their lifetimes and during their careers. So there's an exhibition where people will have the opportunity to come and see these beautiful sculptures and see these beautiful artworks. How do we get involved?
It's interesting that you mentioned education, because when you look at the textbooks on visual arts for the high school, for instance, Sydney Khumalo is given exactly 1 paragraph, and Esrom Lachai exactly 2 photographs. You know?
Wow.
So I thought that is the time to set the record straight, and that is why I am organizing pre-service and in-service art teacher workshops on Wednesday, the 26th of July. People are most welcome to come. I am getting a number of students from the University of Pretoria, student teachers, and we will show them how to enrich the curriculum, you know, to go beyond that paragraph and those 2 images, and how to teach it, but not only the theory or the history of South African art and the importance of these 2 artists in terms of that, but also the practical side, you know. We're dealing with sculpture, with bronze casts, and we want to show teachers how to creatively work with that.
Beautiful. So, Wilhelm, how then do people get involved? Do they go to the website? Is there a social media page where people can find further details as to where, when, what the process of participating is?
All the activities, and we have wonderful talks on the 11th of October on Esrom Lachai, the 20th of October, July on Sydney Khumalo. All those details on our website. We have weekly walkabouts and, of course, the teacher workshops, and it is easy to access that information on that.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Amazing work that both of you gentlemen are doing, shining the spotlight on African art and telling those very important stories. Charles and Wilhelm, thank you very much for joining us here.
Thank you, Abigail.
My absolute pleasure. That was Wilhelm van Rensburg, Senior Art Specialist and Curator, and Charles Skinner, who is an author, just shining the spotlight on those 2 mid-century sculptors, Sydney Khumalo and Esrom Lachai, stories that we aren't often told but are so important when it comes to art history here in South Africa.